yeah, so we're going over seller documents today. Like when I'm doing a signing, the first thing that I look for when I get documents is I immediately scan through the package and I look for the grant bargain sale deed. And that's if you're doing a Nevada file. If you've got documents from another state that's a seller package, they might have something that's called a warranty deed. But you need to look for something that is a deed, because that is what's actually going to transfer the property from the current owner to the new owner. So if that document is not in there, you need to reach out to whoever gave you the signing and ask about it. Because it does occasionally, it's the most important document, but it does occasionally get missed. So that's the first thing that I look for is the grant bargain sale deed. The second thing that I do is on the deed, when you're looking at the deed, let me see if I can find it really quick. If you look at the name from page 1, the name that's printed on page 1 to the signature line right here. So I look at the first page and you can see the names are printed right here, correct? So I look at page 1 and then I go to the signature page on page 2 and I make sure that those names match, because the title company has to write up this document, right? Like this is not a pre-printed, it can be a template, but make sure that those names match, because I have often caught that the names are like they're off by a letter or, you know, whatever. And typically that first page can be corrected after the signing, but the title company really likes it when we're looking at documents. And if we catch something that doesn't quite look right, or if you see something that is kind of confusing or like you're not sure about, don't ever hesitate to ask, because sometimes it's fine and they're like, no, that's how it's supposed to be and this is why, and then you've learned something. Or they're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for finding that. Let us get that corrected really quick and we'll get it reprinted. So that's the second thing that I look at. I want to make sure that page 1 and the signature page, that the names match and that they're, you know, they're the same. The third thing is to make sure that they're not signing like out of a trust or an estate or some sort of business. Because if they are, you need to try to figure out how the title company wants them to sign, right? If they're signing out of a trust, you need to find out if they need to sign any or all documents with trustee. If it's out of the estate, they need, you know, how are they signing per whatever capacity they are. And again, it varies for each, not even each title company, but for each escrow officer. So if you see any sort of verbiage after their name, reach out to whoever gave you the signing or look at the instructions. If it's from a signing service, look at the instructions, because it'll be, you know, it should be printed in there how they want you to sign. If it's not, reach out and ask. Or if it's an escrow officer, I actually started a list just like in my phone of all of my escrow officers' names. I still have this list. All of my escrow officers' names. It doesn't matter what title company they're at. I put that they want all docs signed with capacity, or they just want the grand bargain sale deed signed with capacity. So I have a little cheat sheet, and I still have the cheat sheet of how they want their documents signed with a seller package. So that's maybe a pro tip for you. Start a little cheat sheet so that when you start doing direct work, you can keep track. So that way you don't have to ask every time, and you're just going to know that, oh, Susan over at, you know, whatever title company always likes all the documents signed with whatever capacity it is. But then this escrow officer over here only wants the grant bargain sale deed. So then you don't have to keep asking them every time. And that, you know, they like that too. And when you just know what they want, they appreciate that.
In your
And then,
experience, in your experience, have you seen like for me, I've seen that some escrow officers want it a certain way, but then they have their one-offs. Like you'll ask them a third time and they'll say, oh, it's the
yeah.
opposite.
Yeah. Yes, that is true. Or like I've talked to like somebody else on their team. Like I have one escrow officer, she has 3 escrow assistants. And she had 2 and she just brought on a third. And this escrow officer has never been worried about capacity. But this one assistant sent it out and said, please have them sign all docs with capacity. And I was like, the escrow assistant puts it in there specifically, we'll do it. And the same with even some escrow officers, they have changed their mind over time, which is fine. Then I just update my cheat sheet and say, you know, they don't want capacity or whatever. So yes, that has happened. Okay, and then the second thing, so this is more for like, not second thing, I guess this would be like the fourth thing, is if you're, you know, when you are taking these documents to the signer, when you call the signer to confirm, I always confirm with them. I make sure that the address that I'm going to is correct. I want a verbal, yes, that is the correct address. And then I always ask, because it has happened to me too many times, I always ask now if there's a gate code or an access code that I'm gonna need, because you get there and then there's a gate and you can't get through the dang gate. So I always ask about gate codes, especially here in Vegas. And then and same thing about the names. I will double check the spelling of their names on the documents. So if you don't have the documents yet, I will just look at the order and say, this is how we have your name printed, you know, in the order. Is this how, you know, is this correct? And is this going to match your ID? I now always ask if it's going to match their ID, because again, I've had people that say, yep, that's correct. And then they have a different name on their ID. I'm like, how is that your correct name if it's not even your name that's on your ID? So I have changed my verbiage over the years from, is your name spelled correctly, to, is this how your name is printed on your ID? Because if it's printed on their ID, it's going to be spelled correct, right? So yeah, so those are my like big tips for when you get the package and then before you get to the signers. That's kind of my process of what I go through. So then when you get there, same thing with your, you know, the notary book, as we talked about with the loan package. I get your notary book out first, get their IDs. You want to put all their information in your notary book. And I keep my, you know, if you can go through before and write down the notarizations in your notary book before, I will do that if I have time. So I check off whatever documents it is that we're notarizing. And I get those in my book before. So then if they're in there prior to that, then you can just have them sign your notary book right then and there. And then you can just put your book away once you get their IDs and you're good. And of course, you know, take a picture or scan or whatever you do to get their ID so you can get it back to the title company or the signing service. But if you can't, I keep my book out and I just check off the notarizations in my book as I go. And then I just have them sign at the end. So whatever, you know, whatever's your process for that, but that's how I always do it. So this is the settlement statement. So this is the first document that I always go through with the signers, just because they always want to know, first question is, how much money am I, you know, getting as proceeds? So I always go through this document. So I always start with, this is your, you know, this is the settlement statement. So these are your debits and your credits. Your first credit is going to be the sale price of the property. It looks like you're giving the buyers some credits. So that's what this is here in your debit side. So they're giving you $3,000, or you're giving them $3,000. And then these are prorations. So if you guys don't know what prorations are, that's just from, so this 3/14 is the closing date. So you can see up here, this is the closing date, 3/14. So they're prorating their county taxes from the 14th to July, which would be when the payment was already made through for the county. So they're actually getting money back. So they already paid their taxes, but they don't want to have to pay taxes on the house for after they've sold it. So the title company prorates all of their utilities for them. So they're not paying for anything on the house past the closing date. So this is prorated county taxes, and this is a credit. So this is coming back to them. I often get calls and people are confused. They're like, why am I getting charged for this? I'm like, no, that's your credit. So you're getting those credits back, but it's happening through close. You're not going to get a separate check. That's just a part of your proceeds. And then the HOA, there's a master on this one and a sub. So both the master and the sub HOAs are being prorated from the 14th of March to April 1st. So you're getting those credits back for dues that have already been paid. And then it would be the same for any other utilities that are on there. If there's, you know, sewer or trash or anything like that, those would also be on there. And most likely those would all be credits coming back to the seller because they've already paid those. Okay. And then this is a payoff. So this is their mortgage payoff. This is what they currently owe. And then I say, and then this is how your mortgage company has that number broken down. So this is what they have for the principal. This is what you owe in interest. And then this was the recording fee. So that's how the mortgage company broke down this final number. And then often people will ask, they'll say, well, what if I've already, what if I've already made a payment since then? That's fine. You can make a payment. What will happen is you'll just get that refunded back to you directly from the mortgage company after close. And anything that's left over in your escrow account, same thing. That's your money and you're going to get that back after close. And I will sometimes say that happened to me and my husband when we closed on our home. We got, a couple months later, a month later, we got a check in the mail for, a couple $1,000s because we overpaid on the mortgage from when it sold. So you'll get that back directly from the mortgage company. And then these are the recording fees. So this is just what it's costing to have so it looks like there were 2 spousal deeds, and the recording fees for Clark County are $42 per document. So anything that needs to get recorded is that $42. So if there's 2 spousal deeds, they have to get those recorded before they can record the new deed. So that's what those are. Those are just county fees. And then this is transfer tax. So Clark County, I don't know if you guys know this, but Clark County charges you $5.10 per 1,000 of the sale price. And the seller typically pays that transfer tax. So that's often a big question is why is that such a high number? And you can tell them that's the transfer tax. It's $5.10 per 1,000 of the sale price. And then this is just the e-recording fee to get it recorded. Oops. And then these are the commissions. So this is the listing and selling agent commissions. That's pretty straightforward. Title charges, I usually just say these are just all of the title charges that are coming from the title company. And then this is the owner's title policy. So sometimes people will ask about that one. That one's just covering the new owners for anything that could pop up on title after they've purchased it. And again, commonly that is paid by the sellers. And then miscellaneous. So these are going to be, okay, so then if you look at this, so if you look down here, it says master HOA. So it looks like they're paying dues for March because they were due through close. But then these are their credits coming back up here. Okay, so they're paying HOA dues through March through close, but then they're also getting their credits back for after the property has been the close date, after it's been sold. Okay, and then home warranty. If you ever see need demand on here on the settlement statement or TBD, you can often let them know that this is probably an estimate and it's probably padded. So it's a lot higher than what they think it's going to come in as, so that there will be extra money at the end. And if there's any excess, they'll get that back after close. But the title company typically pads things high just so that they're not short on anything. And then same with the signing fee, notary signing fee. This is also typically padded. We don't, so like, and again, as a notary, when you guys are doing signings, you can't always go off of the fee that is shown on there because they'll often pad it by, $50 to $100. So just because you see $250 on there as a signing fee, that doesn't mean that's actually going to be what you get paid or what we get paid as a signing service. They often pad that as well. So just so you guys know, and you can let the signers know too, that this is often padded. And if there's any excess, they'll get that back after close. And it looks like there was a sewer was due. So they're just paying for sewer here. And then transaction fee. So I don't know if you guys know, but transaction fees are very common in Vegas. As the listing agent, they get charged a fee from their brokerage, basically. And then they just kind of pass that fee on to the sellers. So that's the listing agent fee. That's what that is. It's just a fee that their agent is charging them. So that's not anything that comes from title or anybody else. That's the agent's fee. And then, so then you can, I usually say, so then all of your debits and all of your credits added up are here. And so then that's how they come up with the number that's due to you after close. And this due to seller is what you should be expecting after close. And then I will also sometimes say, but it might be a little bit, it might be a little bit more because they padded those couple of fees. So you might get a little bit more than that back as well. But if you'll often get people that question numbers or like, no, this is not right. I paid this. I shouldn't be having to pay this. You can always point out that this is an estimate. This is not just because they signed this does not mean that they are agreeing to all of those charges and fees. They're just saying that they've seen it is all it is. It's not, because I get calls like that all the time saying that they're not happy with the numbers. So they can either, if they're comfortable signing it and I let them know that it's just an estimate, those numbers can still change. It's okay. Sometimes people are like, okay, great, we'll go ahead and sign it. Some people are like, nope, I'm not signing it. The settlement statement is one that if they're not happy with the numbers and they don't want to sign it, they don't have to. Just let whoever gave you the signing when you're done, just let them know that they were not happy with the numbers. I would call, if people aren't happy with the numbers, call whoever gave you the signing while you're at the table to see if you can figure out why before you leave. But then, also let them know that they, at the end, they weren't happy with the numbers, so they didn't want to sign the settlement statement. And the title company can update that and send that to them to e-sign later. So that's not something that has to be signed right at the table. But if there's questions on the numbers and you don't know how to answer it or you can't answer it, call whoever gave you the signing. And then if they can't either, they'll reach out to title to help figure it out. So definitely call and ask if there's questions on the settlement statement. And then this is just, just make sure they sign and date on the settlement statement. But this is honestly like the kind of the biggest part, because people want to know how much they're getting back and they want to know where their money's going. And so this one has an authorization to split proceeds. So these guys, the proceeds were going to two different people. So you will often sometimes see this. Sometimes these are blank. There's no numbers in here and it's blank and they have to fill it in. So if you see this with names over here, or even if this whole thing is blank, but you see there's two signers, you need to ask the signers how they're splitting the proceeds, and they need to fill that in and put on here how much they're each getting. Because sometimes it's not 50-50. Sometimes it's 70-30. Sometimes one signer is not taking any of the proceeds. So they need to know it's 100 and 0, and then right over here, whose is whose. Okay. And then these are closing instructions. So you'll see all sorts of closing instructions. And just a heads up, you'll see closing instructions too in a buyer's package. And even in a buyer's package, they need to fill out how they want to receive their refund. Because like I said, a lot of numbers are padded. So even in a buyer's package, have them fill out how they want to receive their proceeds. But in a buyer's package, it's more of like a refund than it is proceeds. But for this one, it is proceeds. And another pro tip, if it's in a trust or if it's in an estate or a business, 99% of the time, if they want the proceeds to be wired, they have to have a bank account. They have to have a bank account under the trust name or under the business name. If it's going to an estate, that one can be a little bit different. Oftentimes it just goes to an attorney. So the attorney actually collects the funds and then they disperse it out from there. Every once in a while, the signer will actually have an account for the estate, but more often than not, especially here in Nevada, more often than not, the funds are just going to go directly to the attorney. So then they don't have to fill anything out. They can just print right on here, funds to go to attorney, and then sign. And the same thing on this one. Just make sure that they would fill in their address after close. And then they could still just check wire or whatever they wanted to check on here, but just make sure that they put down that the funds would go to the attorney. If they're just signing for their names, they need to choose an option how they want to receive their proceeds, fill in their address after close, and then fill in all the bank information. Wire payee is the name that's on the account. So that's going to be however their names are printed on the account. And I don't know if you guys have heard this before or not, but that wire payee is important. They have to put it exactly as their name is printed on their account. If it doesn't match, their bank will kick the wire back. It won't get accepted. So it does have to match exactly. So I always tell people, let's look up a bank statement and see exactly how it's printed, because they can change the name on their account when they just open it on their, like if they just open their account on their phone, they can change the name on the account or on a check. They can change it on a check too, because people are like, well, I have it printed on my check. I said, let's check the statement, because on the statement is exactly how you opened the account. You can change the check and you can change the online information, but the statement is exactly how your name is printed on the account. Second tip for wire instructions is that the routing number. So most banks, especially the big banks, have two routing numbers. They have a wire transfer routing number and they have a direct deposit ACH routing number. So make sure that if they're doing the wire, make sure that their bank doesn't have a separate wire transfer routing number. A lot of credit unions don't. Some of the smaller banks don't. They just have one routing number. But that's just a good, pro tip for, to have them just double check. And it's typically just on their, they can log into their bank on their phone and look it up and it'll be in there. If there's two, they'll both be in there. And then always double check. This one here is just if they are trustees. So if they're signing out of a trust, they do have to initial down here. If they're not signing out of a trust, they don't have to initial. But then also here, they need a phone number. So we would, if you didn't fill in a phone number, we would ask you to get their phone number to fill it in, because the title companies always call to confirm their wire instructions. So they need a number to reach out to just to confirm wire instructions. Okay. And then escrow instructions. I usually say these are your escrow instructions. This is just 7 pages of what the title company can and can't do with your information. Go ahead and sign and date here. And then these are the commissions. So commission instructions. I always just say these are your commission instructions. So this is what, you're paying the buyer and the selling agent here. It looks like they're both at 3%. Sometimes it has percentage on here, sometimes it doesn't. But it kind of is what it is. And then sign and date. These ones will sometimes get people's attention too, because if they see a percentage and they're like, well, that's not what we agreed on, then you have to stop and make a phone call. They need to call their agent, because this is an agent's question. I thought we agreed on 2.5%, not 3%. So if there's ever questions on the commission instructions, start with the agent to confirm that that's correct. And then call whoever gave you the signing to make sure that they know that they need to update the commission instructions. And so again, if they're not happy with what the commissions are, or it's wrong, they can skip signing that one. And just as long as the title company knows that they need to correct it, and they'll just send it to them to DocuSign later once it's corrected. And you don't have to do anything with this section down here, because these are for the listing agent and the selling agent. So those, you just leave those alone. They just sign and date if needed. Broker transaction fee. So this is that same fee that I talked about on the settlement statement. So this is just saying that they're agreeing to pay that broker transaction fee. And then HOA violations. So this is just saying that, they're not aware of any HOA violations. They've disclosed anything that, they have associated with the HOA. Non-foreign certification. This one gets people all the time. Really look closely at this one. This is this is just certifying that they're non-foreign, that they have a social security number, and that they're a US citizen basically. And you'll have these for both if they're signing like out of a trust or a business, and as an individual. This will just be entity if it's out of a trust or a business instead of individual. So if these 2B and 2C, always double check to make sure that 2B and 2C are filled in. Sometimes they're pre-printed, sometimes they're not. If it's not, we need a social security number in here for an individual, or if it's, out of a trust or an estate or something like that, if there's an EIN number, we need that on there. If there's no EIN number, we just need whoever social security is attached to that entity. And then the same with the address. And it doesn't matter really what address goes in there, as long as it's an address that's associated with that person or that entity. Because again, they're just trying to certify that you're non-foreign, right? And then this one gets notarized. And there will often be, if there's two people, there will often be two of these. So same thing, double check. See, like this one didn't have anything filled in. So they would have to make sure they fill in the social security number and the address. But this one was pre-printed. The one was pre-printed, one wasn't. So always, always double check that. And certification for no information reporting on the sale, exchange, or principal residence. This one gets people all the time. It's confusing and I totally get it. It's tough. I try my best to help. I mean, you're not supposed to like give any sort of advice. So I tend to just kind of reread it to my signers very slowly is all you can really do. If they have any questions or they're like, I don't feel comfortable signing this one, I want to talk to my tax person, that's also okay. This is one that they can technically fill out and sign later. But like I said, really just trying to read it slowly for them or say, you know, do you have an accountant you can call that you can discuss this with really quick? The other thing too, if they're good and they just whip through those and answer them, just make sure that this number 3, where the taxpayer identification number gets filled in, because that one gets missed a lot too. So again, if it's an individual, it's social security number. If it's a trust or business or whatever, we need an EIN. If there's no EIN, we need whose ever social is attached to that entity printed in here. So this is another one. This is this is one title companies. This is a different title companies. So I wanted to show you guys this one because this one it's different than all the other ones pretty much. I mean, it has the same true false. It has the same information up here and make sure that the social's filled in. But then they have this lovely black box down here that people miss all the time. So just make sure that if you run across, always scan the pages, you know, scan everything really well and double check. Because if you look here, there's a lot of ors that are here. So all of these questions should ideally be answered, right? Was it principal residence or was it other real estate? Circle 1. Are they husband and wife or are they individual? Circle 1. Existing financing was federally subsidized, yes or no? Property is part of an exchange, yes or no? And then this one here, sellers with multiple sellers, they want to know the percentage of ownership. So this goes back to how much of the proceeds are they taking? So if there's, again, 2 sellers, each seller would fill out their own. If they're married and they're filing jointly, they're probably just going to fill one out. And then that would just be 100% because they're married and they file jointly. So 100% of the proceeds is just going to them. But if they're individuals and they're splitting it 50-50, then you would put 50% in here. Or if it's 70-30, you would put 70 in here for the one, and then the other one would fill it out and put 30 for them. This is another, so this is a different proceeds instructions. So again, I showed you the first one. This is another one. So overnight mail or wire. I mean, it's really just, it's not hard, but I think a lot of notaries, we just get going so fast that we don't take the time to just slow down and read what is actually needed there. So overnight mail or wire, we literally just need overnight mail printed or wire printed so that the title company can confirm what it is they want. Forwarding address, if they are ever asking for a forwarding address, always fill it in. So even if they're just getting, even if they're doing the wire, we need a forwarding address printed in here. And then same thing, you fill in the bank account information. And then this one's funny too, because they have this extra bit in here, but if you read it, it's basically just saying that they're giving somebody else permission to give the wire instructions. So they don't have to fill it out, but if they are giving somebody else permission to give their wire instructions, they would put a name in here. And then this little stamp down here, signed with ENT employee, that just means that it's somebody at the title company has already gone over the wire instructions and they don't have to call to confirm the wire instructions because they signed at the title company with one of the title company's employees. Owner's affidavit. So again, this is just going to be a true false all the way down. I think I have a couple of these owner's affidavits. Yep. So this is a different title company. So this one, they just want true false all the way down, right? Easy peasy. This one, I know it doesn't say write none, if none, but they typically want none written on the line or, and I mean, it's typically none. But if I feel like that is, like if there's a blank space and they don't have anything to put in there, write none or write NA because we, technically we want all, all blanks filled in more or less. So this title company, they want none and they want none if none applies. And then again, none down here and then sign and, um, and notarize. And so this one is the co-administrator. The other thing too is, especially for the state of Nevada, if they don't have pre-printed verbiage in the notary section, we can notarize in capacity in Nevada. So like in California, they can't say, Catherine Smith, co-administrator of the estate of Joseph, Smith. They can't notarize that. They can only notarize the individual. So, but in Nevada, we can. So if you're signing and notarizing for somebody who is signing out of whatever capacity, add that verbiage to your notary section. Because technically the county, like when it goes to get recorded, the county wants that capacity on there because they're signing out of that capacity. So if it's a trust, they want, Susie Smith trustee of the Susie Smith Trust. So you would just put that in your notary section. Exactly like that. And we can do that. That's legal in Nevada. We can sign with capacity. It's not in all states though. Title commitment. So this one is just saying that they've received the title, that they've seen it and that they've received it. So they're just going to sign it. And then oftentimes people are like, well, no, I didn't. Technically, they probably did receive the title commitment way back in the beginning of the transaction. They send that out way in the beginning because it shows if there's any liens against the property. Typically, there's also a copy in the signing package. I don't know if there's actually one in here or not. No, there's not. But sometimes there is, and that's you'll see it says title commitment, right on it. And a lot of times it's this document and then the title commitment follows and it's like 11 to 13 pages or something. So you can say, well, actually here, it's right here. And you can show them the copy. And then sometimes there's even a read and approved stamp on the first page of that title commitment as well. This is another one that tends to get missed. This is the pest inspection. I know that pest inspections aren't required. I don't think they're required in Nevada. But if they're in here, they do need to be signed. And typically the pest inspection is paid by the seller, which is why it's in here. So you could even go back when you see this, you say, this is just the pest inspection. You could even go back to the settlement statement and see if the pest inspection is on there. If they paid for the pest inspection, you can say, and you paid for it. So they just want you to sign it saying that you've seen this. And so they're just going to sign. It says signature of purchaser. And typically that's the seller. So they're going to sign and date. Sometimes this will have a read and approved stamp on it. So if it's a read and approved stamp, they can just sign the stamp.
And if there's two sellers and both sellers would sign, right?
That's fine. Yeah, I always did that. Yes, I would feel like that's the safe bet. Mm-hmm.
I've gotten it back once, so now I'm all traumatized.
Yeah, always better to have them both sign everything if there's two sellers for sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then these are the demands. So people get confused with these two. They're like, well, I paid this. And so it's not saying this is just what and you can explain to your signers that the title companies can only charge you for what they know and they found out. So this is how they figure out what your prorations are for the county taxes and what has already been paid. So this is just showing what taxes have been paid so that they know how much to prorate back to you to make sure you get your money back. So I typically will just explain that to signers so that they know that they're not saying that they haven't paid or whatever. This is just how the title company knows how much to prorate. And so it's the same for all of these. Like this is going to be and then read and approved stamp, make sure they both sign or initial. They can sign or initial on read and approved stamps. It doesn't matter. They're just acknowledging that they've seen it and that they know that that's what the title company is using to do the prorations.
The best practice on that when you come through a file and you see this document, but there's no read and approve?
I would have them sign it anyway. Because typically 98% of the time they just forgot to stamp it and they want them stamped. I only have one escrow officer who's like, no, it's fine. They don't need to sign it. I have one out of all the escrow officers that I do work with, only one. Um, all the rest of them want those signed. So if I see documents come through and they don't have stamps, I usually reach out to my EO and I'm like, hey, I don't see any read and approved stamps. Do you want those signed? They're like, oh my gosh, yes, sorry, I'm at home. I couldn't stamp. Please have them signed. And so then I'll just put notes in there for the notary to please, have them sign or initial the first page of all the demands. So yes, if you don't see a stamp, I would just have them sign, even just the first page of each demand. They don't have to sign every page, but at least just the first page or where the numbers are at. Good question. So then this is an HOA demand for service residential. That's HOA. So again, this is just how the title company knows what the HOA dues are. And if there's any fees that go along with the HOA when the house sells. So if there's any transfer fees or anything like that that show up on the settlement statement, this is where the title company gets those numbers. So again, that's why they put them in here so that if the signers have questions, us as the notary, we can go, okay, well, let's look. We can pull up the demand and say, yep, look, it looks like the HOA charges this fee and this fee and this fee. And sometimes they'll even, like on this one, actually, it says 103 due from buyer, 393 due from buyer. So it literally puts in there who's paying it, how much they're paying. So you can show the signer those too. That's why they put them in here so that the signers can see exactly what they're paying for and why. And again, it puts in the monthly HOA dues, and they will typically have in here, when they were paid. Like right here, it says, well, this was a title check, but it says, click to pay e-check. So this was probably them paying dues. So they know how far ahead their dues have been paid so they can prorate those properly. Again, if people say, well, but I'm paid another month ahead, you can say, well, we'll let the title company know, and then they can either get a new demand and update that so that it's correct on the settlement statement before close. That's typically what I start with. I say, well, let's get a hold of the title company. We'll let them know that you've paid a month ahead because they might have paid that before they pulled the demand. So if the title company pulls the demand on, the 5th of the month, but they make the payment on the 7th, it wouldn't show up on that demand. And so I explain that to the signers, that we can ask the title company if they can pull a new demand so it shows updated fees, and then they can update your settlement statement. So that's how you can, correct that. And this is a W-9, but this is actually for the HOA. So you just skip right over this. It's not for them. It's already been signed. It's got the HOA name on there. So you just skip right over that W-9. And then, so this one had a master and a sub. So there's going to be 2 HOA demands in this one. So you can just let them know again. So, you've got the master and the sub. So you've got 2 HOA demands. So this is just the second demand. And again, a second W-9 for the other HOA. And then this was interesting. I put this in here just so that you guys can see that sometimes there are like random things that get thrown in there. So it looks like there was some sort of settlement that went along with this signing, and there were probably some extra fees on this signing's settlement statement. And so they're just putting these letters in here showing the signer that that's where those fees are coming from, and that's why they're getting charged those fees. So if there's fees on the settlement statement that you can't explain, it's super helpful to go back to the demands and just see what's in there, because this might help explain. And they're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And that has to get paid through closing before they can close on the house. So again, a read and approved stamp. So make sure they sign that. Parcel search. This is another one. I had somebody say that they refused to sign this one because it was blank. And it's just a read and approved stamp, but it was blank because this is just to see if there's any, like, technically like liens against the house, and that, not even in a bad way, but just like if there's any SIDS or lids, SIDS and lids shows up on here, which is like the, you know, if it's a new home, they charge, there's a tax that's on there for a few years that has to get paid off. And so if there is, that shows up on this document. So this is, again, it's just showing if there's any other fees that are going to be due on that home. So again, you can explain that to the borrower that if it's blank, that's great. That means there's no extra fees, there's no SIDS or lids or anything. So a blank one is good. If there's numbers on there though, that would explain why and what those are for. And then this is the trash demand, just so that you guys can see it. And so balance due is 45. This is, I will often get questions on the settlement statement about the trash demand because they're like, oh my gosh, that's not, I don't pay that much in trash, but they charge $81 per document to release those fees. So again, this is a good, when they question that, well, let's go look at the demand, and you flip back to that demand and you say, oh yeah, see, it looks like Republic Services charges you just to pull the demand. And that's the case in a lot of things. They charge you money to find out what you owe. And so you can just let them know that that fee was actually from the title company. That's why it's, I mean, not the title company, the trash company. So that's why the fee is higher, but it's really only $45 for, well, they're paying $45, I guess, from March 1st to March 31st. So, and then this is going to be the mortgage demand. So this is the mortgage payoff. So I typically just will say, this is your mortgage payoff. So this is the amount shown for payoff. And same thing, if they ask questions about, you know, about making a payment after, you can just explain that they'll get that refunded back to them straight from the mortgage company. Grand bargain sale deed. So this is, like I was saying, this transfers the property from the original owners to the new owners. And just make sure when they sign that their signatures stay out of the typed names. So I will often just ask signers to start their signature here and sign over so that they're not going into the typed names. If they go into the typed names, the title company has to reprint their names so that their name is not written through. So that's just a pro tip for that. And just make sure that they date it up here properly. If there's a pre-printed date, do not change it. Just leave any pre-printed dates. We actually had this happen just a couple weeks ago. It's a title company out of Arizona, but the notary changed the date, and the escrow officer came back and said, please don't change those dates. It's not actually the signing date. It can correlate with another document that we created, and we need those dates to match in certain situations. She said, this time it's fine, but just a heads up for next time, please don't change those pre-printed dates. So that's a good tip. Don't change the dates. Even on loan documents, if loan documents are pre-dated, I would just, if they're like pre-printed, but it's wrong, I would just leave it. Because if it's pre-printed on there, it's for a reason. And typically, if they don't sign that day, they have to change the date anyway. So typically they do match, but if it's pre-printed, don't change the dates. So declaration of value. So this one, as the seller, so you can see all their information is printed down here. Sometimes this grantor and grantee is pre-printed. Sometimes it's not. If it's not, just know that it goes in this order, right? Grantor, grantee, grantor, grantee. And ideally the sellers, one seller, they only need one signature ever on this document. They don't even have to have a signature on this lower line. They just need one signature on this document, and then that goes in with the grant bargain sale deed. This is just showing if there's any transfer tax they have to pay. If there's not transfer tax, they have to put on here what the exemption is. And so that's what this document is for. It's just saying if there's any transfer tax that goes along with this sale. And then if you're filling in, if this is blank, if the signers can fill this in, that's awesome. Make sure that they fill it in per the correct spots. So for my Ron notaries out there, the address can't all go on one line. They want it broken up into each section. Otherwise, the county's going to reject it and they have to redo it. And technically, anybody can sign this document. The escrow officer can sign this and put escrow. The agent could sign this and put agent. So technically anybody can sign this document, but it's easiest for the title company if it comes back ready to go, right? So have one signer sign the top line, fill in the address on the correct lines. That's the most helpful way to go about it. If this is not checked up here, if one of these, if they want to check it, they can. If not, that's okay too. The title company will be able to check off the correct one. If they're not sure, it's okay. They don't have to check that off if it's not checked. Okay, so grant, bargain, sale deed, instruction without consideration. So this is like if there's a spousal deed, which just means that one of the spouses is not on title, so they have to sign off their rights to the title before they can record the new deed. So this is just saying that they're giving the title company permission to write that deed up for them. So they're just going to sign that, giving permission. And then this is the actual spousal deed. So when you read this, Rodney Smith, spouse of the grantee, gives to Cheryl, a married woman, as her sole and separate property. So you can read that and see that it's a spousal deed. The one spouse is giving their consideration over to the other. And so you can just explain to them, because some people get confused. They're like, well, I wasn't on the house when he bought it. I've never been on title. And you can say that's exactly why you're signing, because Nevada is a community property state. Once you're married, what's yours is his and what's his is yours. So even though you're not on title, you technically have rights to that home. So you have to sign off your rights now that you're married so that he can sell it as his sole and separate property. So that's kind of my spiel when people question. You'll often see these out of office notary acknowledgements. In the state of Nevada, we're technically not allowed. We can't, some of these documents you'll see that they want you to stamp it, like with your notary stamp. If you're not notarizing another individual's signature, you shouldn't put your stamp on a document. So if any of those documents ask you for your stamp, you can just leave your stamp off or just print on there, you know, not allowed by state law or something, so that you're acknowledging it, but you just can't do that. But always fill these documents out and sign it. You can sign it. That's not a problem. Just no stamping for us Nevada notaries anyway.
What exactly is that stating? Out of office notary acknowledgement? Is that we are signing it or they are signing it outside of an office?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
That they're not signing in office. You're the outside notary, and they just want the notaries, like down here is your information. So just in case there's any problems with the documents or they have questions, they technically have the individual notary that did the signing. They have their information. This is for a specific title company, but they, sometimes there's a read and approved stamp on here, and they want that read and approved stamp signed. And then they also want the names printed. This is actually just a printed name. This isn't actually it's not actually a signature. They just want the buyer or the seller's name printed here. They want a good email address, phone number, and then the property address that's in the transaction. So if you see this one, always fill this out. If there's a read and approved stamp, fill it out and have them then sign the read and approved stamp. So some of these are, I'm going over specifics for title companies, but these are all title companies that are, here in Las Vegas. So if you're doing, signings here in Vegas, you'll run across these docs. Any other questions?
Another question.
Yes.
So this is the first time I had to do like a witness. I know that they are signing in my book, but do I need a copy of their ID as well? Like take a photo of it like I do with the signers?
If you're doing something for a title company, yes.
Okay.
If it's just general notary work and the documents are staying with the signers, no, I guess you wouldn't. You wouldn't anyway, even of the signers' IDs. But yes, I would say if I would get anybody that was there and signed any document, I would get their ID.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much. This was great. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it. And I'll see you in the Facebook group. And again, if anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to reach out or, use the Facebook group to ask questions. We're all here for you. And yeah, everybody have a good weekend. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
You're so welcome.